Hi, everyone. This is Bill McDonald, the Writing and Reading Doctor. Welcome to CREST Online Training, Part 1, Lesson 16, where we close out editing on usage in a passage format. And I kind of have it set up in an interesting way where the first 5 sentences, it would be kind of like doing it as a class or as a group. If we're already ready for group, like I'm thinking we might be, we can bypass practicing the whole class, but there's enough sentences where you can do what I call alphabetical order teaching: class, group, partner, solo. If you're watching this and you are wondering, do I have this in Spanish? Yes, I have this same Dear Doc binder in Spanish, at least for the editing and revising, for clase, grupo, pareja, solo. That when we're teaching new skills, new concepts, especially because usage and subject verb agreement has to do with learning how to read in the context of not just an entire sentence, but a paragraph or a passage. It's important that your kids are able to not just go straight to solo, work independently. You know, you're the opposite side of the little solo boy that you received has a MICE acronym, and MICE stands for modeling and mentoring all the skills: reading, writing, editing, revising. Then you graduate to independent, where you take things that are I incorrect and you make them C correct. And if we're working on editing like we've been doing these last 15, 16 lessons, then you're improving the conventions, the grammar. If you're improving the content, that's the improving of the organization and development. That's the revising, which will be part 2. And so the interesting thing is that a lot of teachers go straight to the E part of MICE, where they give kids an exam and they didn't even allow them to work independently to practice the skill. They didn't get to practice working on content or conventions. They weren't working in a class or a group format or even with a partner. They just went straight to assigning worksheets. And that, my friends, is not teaching reading or writing. So the way I'm going to model is how to progressively get to the point where your kids can do the last portion alone. You're going to notice that in the passages that we're going to look at, and I'll go ahead and show it to you right now, in the passage that's specifically for usage, and you're going to go to page 365 through 367, it says groups for 1 through 5. So as you see here, there's the passage, and then sentences 1 through 5 are not even on here, as you can see. So it's going to be something that your kids will do independently for sentences 1 through 10. You know, I like to say it sometimes that we live in an open-ended world until we get into classrooms where everything is multiple choice. Well, I intentionally left the first 10 sentences with no choices at all, where your kids are going to have to find the mistake and use the correct usage subject verb agreement for 1 through 5 as a group. As you can see, if you want to follow the directions here, 6 through 10 working with a partner or partners, you know, 2 or 3 people at the most, using the stage whisper. That's where they'll do it softly. Group work 1 through 5 can be done loudly, and then on their own they can do 11 through 19 following the acronym rules. If you have been following my CREST online training so far, you know that I really like that. But because there is nothing in terms of 1 through 10 To eliminate, it's going to be read, underline something that you think sounds or looks wrong, label it, execute the strategy by deciding which change you're going to make, because editing with cups, cups, is always going to be what change should be made in sentence blank. And so these are all going to be usage problems. And so it's important that your kids read the sentences loudly or in a medium voice as they're when they work with the groups there, as you can see. And then for 6 through 10, work with one partner or two at the most. And then level 3, that they can try 11 through 19, which are in multiple choice format on their own. And they should have an easy time on this solo part because the answers are there, the choices are there, and they can just pick the one that sounds the best. So the ones that we're going to work on together with groups or partners are going to be the ones that are going to be harder because the mistakes are not written out for them as you would see in a typical multiple choice format. Because I want to graduate, because too many kids are so used to multiple choice, they panic when they see an open-ended response. Like there's nothing written at all here. So we're going to have to go through sentences 1 through 5, and I'll pretend like you're my group. So let's take a look at what the directions say. Israel was asked to write an essay about an invention that he feels has impacted his life. Read Israel's essay and think about what changes he could be made to improve the paper. So changes or corrections, anytime that you see the word changes or the word corrections right there, you know that you're doing editing. But they are going to supposedly be writing the word editing on top of 2 passages and the word revising on top of 2 passages. So hopefully there won't be an issue. So let's go ahead and I'm only going to do 1 through 5 with you. So if you have somebody there at your home, or you're working with a school teacher, a friend, go ahead and watch the video together as I model working with a group. You're my group, and I'm going to pretend like you're right there with me watching, and kind of follow along and watch what I do. Then you can do the same. If you don't have the ability to annotate, what you can do is just write numbers 6 through 10 and on regular lined paper, and just make the one change. Whatever you see me doing on the passage, you can just do it on numbers 1 through 5 with me, or 6 through 10 when you start working with a partner, and then of course 11 through 19 when you're doing on your own. So here we go. Following along as I read medium to loud voice. Capital. Parents and grandparents, that's called the compound subject, plural. These days, likes to torture today, apostrophe S, you, with stories that always begin the same, comma, quotation, capital. When capital I was your age, ellipsis, 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 quotation, sentence over. So what sounded kind of weird to me was the word likes. Since we're talking about parents and grandparents, whenever you have a compound subject, what I would recommend you do is draw 2 heads and say, oh, it's the parents and the grandparents liking to torture the youth. So they likes to torture? No, they like to torture. So the mistake that I would fix there for number 1 is we'll just put that in little spaces when we can find them. Parents like to torture. Okay, so we're going to remove, because it just doesn't sound right. We'll remove likes and change it to like. All right. So again, you would write this on a piece of paper, or if you decide to print out the passage, you can do it like I'm doing with a pencil or a pen or a marker, whatever. Okay. Uh, let's clear the drawings. 2, capital. I know, I is my subject. So what do we got here? We have a pronoun for the subject. That's who's doing the action. I know that the main ideas, plural, is usually true since they are comparing their technology void childhoods to our technology filled ones. Now, since ideas, I held up multiple fingers for plural, then ideas would not use is, ideas would use are. So if I were to fix that in right there, I would type it between the lines and it would look something like that. Change is to are because the ideas are plural. All right. Then it's 3. Capital. I cannot, imagining. Imagining is a word, but because it doesn't sound right when you put it with can't, I can't imagining. They spend their time imagining. That would be plural. That could work. They spent their time imagining, but me, I can't imagining. No, I'm going to drop that ing. I can't imagine being a kid without computer games and TV shows to keep me busy, period. So I'm going to say, I think that imagining is the one that we're going to change. Change imagining to imagine. It's red, but that's okay. All right. And then you try it out loud and see how it sounds. Capital I cannot imagine being a kid. Sounds good now. Number 4, capital. It must had been awful without them. It is singular. So it was awful. It is awful. It have been. It must had been. Must have been sounds the rest. So the best. So you try all of the ones to see which one would work the best with our subject, a singular pronoun. It must have been. So I would cross off have, and then I'll get my text and write right in there between the lines. It must have been awful. And I'll leave that one there since I think I can find room for this last one that we're going to do as a group. And then try 6 through 10 with somebody that you're teaching with if you're working and if you're co-teaching, and then try the rest solo. All right, read, underline, label, capital specifically, comma, how you're doing something. The internet is something that I know I can't not live without in my life. Since we have 2 double negatives, whenever you have math, if you have 2 negatives, it turns it into a positive. I can live without is something I can live without in my life. They were saying that they can't live without it. So They either have to say one of these two choices, and if you want to talk about multiple answers, you could either, the internet is something I know I can't, and just get rid of, just remove not. I can't live without, or the internet is something I cannot live without, and both of those would be correct. So the idea is do number 6 through 10 with a partner, graduate to independence is what I'm trying to show you here. And that way, when we get down to the sentences that actually have multiple choice, starting with 11, they'll be able to do it. And so I'll just do number 11 only. Number 1, what change, underline change, should be made in sentence 11? So since we're doing question 1, then what I recommend that you do here is write on the side, and I can put it pretty much anywhere, my acronym for checking, doing my strategies. So we are going to read the question like we did, then we'll go read sentence 11 in the passage. We're going to underline and label in both places. Then we'll start to eliminate 3 answers, and we'll select one that we'll submit into the answer document and the computer Scantron. Now, if you notice, I have to lower my mouse just a tad to get where I can see all 4. So let me erase this part here, here, and here. And then I'll go ahead and add rules again for you guys, just so you can remember. It's read, underline, label, eliminate, and select one answer, is what we were doing there. So when it said sentence 11, what I would recommend that you do, so we don't make a mistake, have your kids write Q number 1. Question number 1 is about sentence 11. So change are to is. Those are both correct. So that would be U for usage. Effect singular to effects plural. That would be usage. Change has to have. That would be usage because they're both correct. Change childhood to childhoods. There are many childhoods that have been disrupted. So it sounds like it could be used. So again, we're gonna have to decide which one has the wrong usage. It's being used incorrectly, which has the wrong subject verb agreement. So now that we've done that, I'll clear the drawings from here so that it won't make what we're looking at on page 365, where sentence 11 is. I believe there it is. So what do I recommend that you do? That you draw an opening bracket and a closing bracket on sentence 11, and then you write in here so that you can see this is question, got my caps on, question number 1 is about sentence 11. And if you haven't watched any videos and you skip to this one about usage, the reason I like putting brackets here instead of using underlining is because sometimes the line that you draw is so thick, it's covering up some of the periods and the commas. So it says that there's a mistake because I remember that there was not a make no change or sentence 11 is correct. Capital, of course, comma, there are some negative effect that the internet has on my childhood. Well, since some is plural, I have to remember that since that's more than one, I have to realize that it's not going to have an effect, it's going to have some negative effects. Of course, there are some negative effects that the internet has on my childhood. So we, I think that's the best one, but then we've got to go back and look at the answer choices and see which one it is. Change are to is. There's my effects. So I already know that that one is the correct one. Change are to is in letter A. I know there is some negative effects. Since is for singular, there is a negative effect. It says some, so I can't do that. I can't change are to is, so that would be wrong. Let's try to read softly or loudly. C, change has to have. 11. There are some negative effect that the internet have on my childhood. Have, has. The internet is basically one object. I would probably say has on my childhood is a better choice. So I'm going to eliminate that one. On my childhoods, since I'm only one person, I can't have uh, more than one childhood. I only get to grow up once. Unfortunately, we don't get to relive life twice. So the answer that seemed to be correct is going to be change effect singular to effects plural. So our last thing, we are going to eliminate 3 over here since we don't want to touch our bubble if the bubble is on the A or next to A, depending on what kind of program you practice with. We can't eliminate all of them. So I've got to say, well, I've got to select one. So let's select letter B. And then the cool thing about Zoom is that it allows you to make, if you have a multiple choice, well, let's go ahead and make it, let's go ahead and make it black. So the same color that the kid will be seeing. And the cool thing about multiple choice letters, if you're going to use paper, which I highly recommend once in a while, that the letter is the same size as the bubble for the most part. So your kids can practice kind of filling in that in. And something that I recommend that you do is as soon as you write, as soon as you're filling in that on the paper or on your Zoom or whatever program you might be using, you can write the letter B, and then if many of you are having the answer document in a separate place as the test, like as if they're not connected to each other, if you're still practicing on paper sometimes, then your students could write a B here. And then the idea is that the one B that you're going to select in your book has to match the one B that you're going to select in the Scantron. So that's doing one together, and I recommend that you do that. But because we've been practicing usage, you know, hopefully by this time the kids are pretty strong and they'll be able to hopefully be able to do 1 through 9 on their own. They're not going to be perfect. I suggest that you do take away points if they don't do any underlining and labeling, if they're just marking. There has to be consequences. And so they either need to lose points or you take away some of their free time and say, come in during recess, during your lunch, or during PE. If you're not going to do things correctly on my time, then you're going to come in and do it on your time, because there just has to be something that motivates the students. If I give you a strategy, then I expect you to use that strategy. So what I'm going to do to transition out of part 1 editing is take you over to a section where your kids can practice single sentence editing of cups. And the cool thing is that each mistake, each letter, and so I'm going to type here 185. And so when I looked in the binder, I was like, well, how many pages do I have this mixed, open-ended, and multiple choice? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 3 open-ended, and then we can get right to the nitty-gritty, and we can practice what change with regular cups, or if it says what is the correct way or what is the best way to write sentence, then the kids will know that it's going to be a run-on or a fragment. So we'll read, underline, label. So change should be made in sentence 1. Change said to say, because that is 2 correct ways to use a said word, that's usage. Change parents, plural, to parents, apostrophe S. And I'm going to say that because, yes, it could be usage, but because this one, the correct answer supposedly involves punctuation, it's a punctuation mistake if I have to put an apostrophe S, singular possessive, or singular possessive, that it belongs to one parent. And your kids would practice just drawing a little wall right here. Change believe to believe. Well, I already know that believe is not a word, and I can see it right there. Change believe to believe. There's no such thing. And so I don't need to look it up in a book. I already know. My parents have always say, no, I think that that is wrong the way it is. The parents, I have to own the next word. My parents can't own a have, so you don't use singular possessive. So the believe to believe so far seems to be the right answer. Change have to having. That one would be usage, because they're both correct. It just depends on how it's being used. Let's check it out. Capital, my parents have been always said they believe in me. That doesn't sound right, so I'm going to cross off that one. So the answer that we're going to choose is letter C. So we'll fill it in, and I'm going to go to the drawing of Zoom, and I will fill in letter C, a little bit bigger. Whoops, I needed to do the fill in drawing. Let me undo that. Fill in letter C. Again, you can put a little C right here next to it. Put a C here so that the 1C that you choose in the book is going to match the 1C in the Scantron. Now, here's what I recommend, because we don't have time to do a million. This is like 180 to 230. It's like 50 pages of just single sentence change. And that's what's going to happen. They're never going to have to fix in a passage more than one mistake in a sentence. And usually, just if there's 10 or 15 sentences in the passage, they're only going to have to fix one, two, three, like 3 to 4, maybe 5 in end of course 1 and 2. Your kids will have to do 9 editing in 2 different passages, so it'll be 5 and 4. But with 3rd through 8th grade and 9th and 10th next year, they say it's going to be 2 passages, but they haven't said exactly how many points they're going to be worth in total. The last time I saw it, it was on the field test. It was like if you got an editing passage on the field test this past spring, it was going to be 2. It was going to be 1 passage, I believe it was, with 6 editing questions at that time, or it was going to be 2 revising with 3 questions each. But I've already seen, like when they did the test design schematic, that it was going to be 2 passages. So we just will have to find out how many it's going to be. And I was told by the director of content from TEA that yes, the questions of editing and revising will only be worth 1 point, and no, they will not be multiple choice 100%, that some of the editing and revising questions will be some of the constructed type response. So we'll get into a little bit of that in part 3 of the CREST online training, how to do that in reading, math, social studies, science. I'll share lots of different things with you on how to at least get as close, to the state format. If you guys use the state's programs, then you can, some of the testing formats are pretty similar to the way the kids are going to see it. So what I'm going to do in closing is, let's say you only have time for one of these a day that you already practiced. So we'll do like our Dear Doc time, our daily editing and or revising of development, organization, and conventions, because that's what it says on the top of the page. And so they've already got an entire semester behind them of working on these skills. And again, they're only going to be asked to fix 1 mistake in 1 sentence, and possibly only up to 3 sentences and an entire passage, or at the most 4. So what you might say is you have 1 minute to do as much as you can from a question. So I'm not going to set my timer, but I'm going to watch my clock down below. But you can set the timer and say you have 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever you have. Then have your kids go as far as they can, and fix as many mistakes as they can in the 1 minute. So as soon as my timer changes to 11:01, which is when there it is, capital. Whenever you're mad about something, comma, just take a deep breath in and out, period. Change your, not mine, to your, you are. Whenever you are mad about something, that does sound like a good idea. I like it. Change deep, double vowel on E to deep. I've never seen that before, so I think that I'm going to eliminate that one. Change the period to a question mark. Whenever, you could say, when are you going to do something? But they're saying whenever, so I don't think it would make sense to do that one. And change take to took. My timer just went off. So if I'm in the middle of one, you can just finish the one that you're doing. And so I get to actually do one complete question. So that in 1 minute, I was able to almost make it through all four choices. So you can say minute to win it. So I wasn't able to finish, but there are some kids that can work so quickly that they will be able to do one or two of these verbally and in written form. Change take uh, right now, present tense, to took, past tense. Whenever you're mad about something, comma, just took a deep breath. I think we're talking about right now, so I would not change to past tense. So I would probably say that F is the correct one. So we will change your to your. And so there you have it for editing part one CREST online training. For the next 50 pages, your kids can practice, and maybe you might only have 1 to 5 minutes, but we've got to keep practicing because unless we do extra time on editing conventions in an open-ended format and a multiple choice format with mixed skills here, like we have, the kids are not going to get stronger. They're just going to get weaker if you don't review. And so anywhere between 1 to 2, 3 minutes a day, pick one of these from 189 to page 230. If you look at that in your binder and you say you only have those 2 minutes to go as far as you can. And if you make a copy for each student, or if they're doing it online, because you're welcome to let everybody have their own copy of this binder as a digital copy in your classroom, that's perfectly fine. And you could have them all downloaded and do the same things that they watch you do on your screen, they can do it on theirs and kind of follow along. So what I recommend is don't just go on to the next skill, because if they need extra time or extra times doing something, then give them that chance. Don't just keep pressing on 100 miles an hour with your lesson plan if we are seeing gaps and holes in terms of the conventions. So that concludes editing, which was the part one. Our next video will begin the revising, which is when I clear my drawings here. This binder is called Dear Doc for a reason. Basically, it's daily editing and revising of development, organization, and conventions. And ever since the test, the editing and reading was joined. So daily editing, revising / reading of development, organization, and convention. So editing is improving the conventions, revising is improving the content, and reading is just understanding the content and being able to apply reading skills to passages. And editing and revising is just applying writing skills to passages. But it's critical that if you are watching this and you didn't purchase parts 1 and 2, it's going to be very hard for your students to know how to do constructed type responses if their grammar is very poor, especially when it gets to short answered, short constructive responses that are going to require them to write in sentences for 2 points in reading from 3rd through 10th grade, and that one question that's worth 5 points from 2 different readers, the extended essay response, must be strong in both grammar skills and content, because in revising, we're going to be learning that we're going to be thinking of not cups as in C, not cups as in CUPSSS, superheroes, capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, sentence boundaries, and superhero penmanship and keyboarding skills. We're going to use ARM for revising, that we're going to add, remove, replace, or move a word, a phrase, a line, a transition, a cause and effect relationship, a compare, contrast. We're going to fix the content where the author intentionally made mistakes in the content. And so we'll be improving the organization, the order of it, or the development of it by adding a sentence and then revising. Just for those of you that are new, we're never going to be asked in a revising question to add more than one sentence for a question. So that's something you won't have to worry about. You will get 2 passages of editing and revising. So this concludes editing. Hope that you enjoyed these 16 lessons, plus the bonus ones that I've been kind of throwing out there from some of the most difficult test questions from this past year. If you have access to any of the reading / science, social studies, biology, math, and you're noticing that the question percentage statewide was pretty low, take a snapshot for me, send it to me, and I'll apply my visual, verbal, auditory, and kinesthetic techniques to any question that did poorly statewide. And hopefully, with that total physical response method that we've been beginning to utilize, your kids are going to do well and build their confidence. So thank you so much for being a part of CREST online recorded training part 1. We now move to part 2. In our next video, you should have received at least 16 emails or links or connections. Some of you who are watching this post summer of 2022 will be receiving all of these in a USB drive so that you can have access to them that way and be able to have all of the files that you need inside the USB drive, along with the ways to access the videos. So hopefully that will make things easier where they won't be all over the place. I'll have part 1 in a folder, part 2 in a different folder, part 3. So at the end, all of you who are watching these emailed versions will get that USB drive as well. I'll send that off to all of you so that you can have parts 1 through 5 all in a USB drive that you can take wherever you go, as long as you have your computer that you're using has the structure or the programs that allow you to have access. So take care and God bless.